Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
You know, there's not a whole lot in the ordinary news media, TV and all, about the American system of assassination and the drone program. In a way, it's sort of quiescent. You know, we do recall when Obama gave the directions by executive order that he has the authority to assassinate even American citizens on his discretion. But it's sort of been quiet. But now some of our friends in the area of trying to get information we need and get it from the whistleblowers, there was a major article coming out on The Intercept. And this is a website, of course, that Glenn Greenwald and Jeremy Scahill operate, and it's very, very important in revealing information. And they have come across, and there's been a group of researchers there that have drawn up a thing called the Drone Papers. But Scahill just wrote a recent article sort of summarizing this and telling us what some of the top points are. And this is rather revealing, and it's something that unfortunately is not on the hearts and minds of people right now. And I think they even lament this fact because they think it's so tragic. They mention how tragic it is that the American people don't do much. But one reason they don't do much is they're not energized. I mean, what are they being energized right now on the TV? It's to look at only at crony political incidents in the campaign. So that's what they're enticed to. So I'm sure you have looked at this. Is there any striking things here that caught your attention on this report?
Well, you know, this is from a new whistleblower who requested to remain anonymous, who obviously gave a lot of slides and a lot of hard-dated, secret classified slides to show the extent of the U.S. drone program, and also to show a little bit more about the nature of the program, what it means, the philosophy behind it. You know, the big headline yesterday, although if you only watch the mainstream media, you might not see it, but the big headline yesterday from this report was that during a 5-month period of Operation Haymaker in Afghanistan, 90% of those killed were not the intended targets.
Yeah, but they seem to be able to brush this off a little bit. They're not innocent people. They're not innocent civilians. They conveniently say that, yes, there was somebody killed, but they were classified as the enemy. So if they bomb mistakenly or on purpose to get one individual at a funeral, and 9 out of 10 are innocent, they used to just say, well, it's collateral damage. But no, now they're more aggressive. They're saying they're enemies, and therefore their conscience are taken care of, and this is part of the process. This is part of the terrible thing about war, but we have to adapt to it, and this is our job to make us safe, you know, in the world. And I think some of them actually brainwash themselves. You know, I know brainwashing is a dangerous tool in war times, but probably the most dangerous thing are those who participate and incite war, brainwash themselves to the point they think they're doing the Lord's work. And so often religion is involved in this on both sides. Oh yeah, this is God's will, and we have to do this. That to me is a big danger as much as the process. But the process here of drones and targeted killing and assassinations, I think is dangerous territory.
It seems fundamentally un-American, the concept that you are guilty until proven innocent. If they, as you say, if at a funeral they kill 10 people, 9 of them are not the target, they're classified EKIA, enemy killed in action. Right. And then later if they discover they weren't enemies, then they'll reclassify it. So it also allows them to pump up their kill numbers. We've killed 40 enemies today, 50 enemies today.
It's their solution, and they convince themselves of this. But they talked another thing about the conditioning. They recognize, oh well, the people, the whistleblowers here are talking about the people that they disagree with, and they reveal this. He says they come to the point where the reason they do this, they're able to do this, is they have to dehumanize their target. They're not people anymore. And they had an interesting comment about that. Let me just read that. And they're referring to the people they are sent out to kill. And he said those people who participate in these drone killings, they have no rights, they have no dignity, they have no humanity to themselves. They just are a selector to an analyst, just a thing. You eventually get to the point in the target's life cycle that you are following them. You don't even refer to them by their actual names. This practice, he said, contributes to the dehumanizing of the people before you've even encountered the moral question of, is this a legitimate kill or not? They're void of morality, which I guess they have to do that, or they wouldn't be able to kill somebody. So they have to go through this process, and I think this is not something new or different. I think most wars involve this. I mean, you just think about what names we've called our enemies, and we have to do it going on currently right now. You know what is portrayed in the eyes of many Americans when you say terrorist, and well, we don't. I've been told he's a terrorist, kill him. Well, they have no idea if he's a terrorist. He might be a suspect, but it's this giant leap. They just use these words, and they're able to adapt. But you know, I think there's more than just dehumanizing the enemy. I think the process dehumanizes the person. And I, have this conviction, which I mentioned in my book, about the individual who does the killing has to be dehumanized as well. But I've also argued the case that if that is not canceled out by governments wanting to push in the propaganda, I think it's a natural instinct for people not to walk up to a stranger and just say, oh, okay, I'm going to kill him. But they condition people to do this. This is just so bizarre and so contrary to humanity and contrary to what I think should be an exceptional position for the America.
Well, I think your position is backed up by the fact that it's well documented that there's an epidemic of PTSD among drone operators. And that wasn't supposed to happen because they're safe in a comfortable room in New Mexico or wherever they're operating from.
Yes, and I did talk a little bit about that in my book, but I have to admit, when I read about that and actually quoted some of the individuals and family members, because some of them went and committed suicide because of the enormity of what they were doing, and then they were separated from the hype, then all of a sudden, and the other thing is there are not a lot of feel guilt. I mean, you can take pills, but the way we treat PTSD is that we don't say there's guilt, because that means the foreign policy of the United States should be questioned. There can't be guilt. We're exceptional. We know what is right, and I think that adds fuel to the fire.
It almost sounds like a dystopian science fiction film, what you said earlier, where these aren't people, they're selectors. It sounds like one of these 60s films where the machine would come and they would kill people over 30, and that sort of thing. It's so bizarre.
Well, and I think that has always been a challenge throughout history. It's just that I keep wanting to believe, and I believe it is the case, that the human race should be able to progress. That we have evolved in one sense in the technological way, and we have greater abundance because we live better and we have automobiles and this sort of thing. But we don't seem to have advanced very much in the cause of treating people, interacting with people. And matter of fact, the technology has served to just go into the war effort. So often, yes, we have appliances and all these things that makes our life better, but how much of this effort goes into, how much of our energy now and our money and our wealth goes into killing each other? So that's such a contradiction, and I'm still optimistic enough that the human race can change and actually make progress, because I think it's a natural instinct. I don't think war is natural. What is unnatural is the allowance of people to get hold of our governments, who hold the propaganda machine, and allows people to be dehumanized, and they do it in the name of goodness and exceptionalism. That's why it's so disgusting when people say, and then if you say, well, America is not the exceptional nation, we have our own problems, then you're un-American, unpatriotic, and you don't care about freedom and liberty. That's how bizarre it is.
It's interesting. You make the point about the tools that we use every day being weapons of war. One of the things about this report that struck me is that the heavy use of signals intelligence to determine targets, and that means the use of cell phones, the use of computers, and one of the points that they make in this report is that leads to a very, very high rate of mistaken kills. They may think that they're following the cell phone of a terrorist. It's actually his mother or his sister or his niece or something. And I thought about this as a lesson for people at home who use cell phones and computers, and many of them say, well, I don't care if the government looks in at my stuff, I have nothing to hide. Well, the fact is governments make mistakes all the time. And this is just an example. So they should rethink that theory and think about their civil liberties at home.
You know, some now who are recognizing, who are participants in this policy, which is atrocious, they're recognizing, they're willing to say, which sometimes neocons, you know, recognize things aren't going so well. So some of these people are saying, yeah, there is a downside to this. Maybe we shouldn't kill them so quickly. We should be doing more capturing. We should have more Guantanamos, and we need Abu Ghraib, and we could get more information. They don't say, hey, you know, what we can do is we can have more torture chambers and get this information so we know what they're doing. And I think, what a rationale. But they're even admitted there's an unintended consequence because they're killing the people that, in their view, have the information that they want. Let's say there was a real legitimacy to the war. Well, you know, maybe getting information is important, but now they're saying this could be a disadvantage. You know, killing people just out of hand.
Well, how well is it done? Look at the drone program in Yemen. Look at what a disaster it is. Look at it in Afghanistan. The president just said yesterday, things are going so well in Afghanistan that we don't dare leave. You know, talk about spin. Look at Somalia. Has it improved anything?
It never enters their mind that maybe the policy is wrong. And this whole thing is that it is not the drone that does this. You know, drones aren't policy, you know, they're not the policy. It's the use of the drone, and the policy is bad, and it's a rejection of the policy that was intended when America was a much more exceptional nation, when they were trying to lead the way around the world in freedom. Now we're number 20 in the country, in the world today, so that was past, but now we're not very exceptional. We're exceptional in that we think that we have this exceptional responsibility to sort out every evil in the world, and even when there's a legitimate evil, substituting it with a worse evil has been the consequence. And they're unwilling to admit it. They're unwilling to say, you know, this isn't working. You know, maybe there is a better way. Maybe we can change the attitude of people around the world. You know, if we have a neighbor that has bad habits or what, and we don't march in their house and tear it apart and say, you do it our way. We don't like the way you're raising your kids, and you don't go to church, and you don't read the right books. We want you to do this, and you haven't been voting lately. I mean, we wouldn't think of that. But that's what we do to people around the world. So why in the world they do that? But back to the question that was asked in this article, why don't the American people wake up? And unfortunately, in this debate going on, it's so rare to hear an honest debate about some of these basic principles, you know, looking forward to the next election. They're not dealing with this. It's just who's the most authoritarian, who's going to drop the most bombs, who can build the biggest fence. All this stuff goes on, never questioning the principles of individual liberty. And I think as long as that's absent, we're going to coast and drift, and of course we can't be divorced from the financial cost of this, because there's going to be financial costs, and eventually we'll have to deal with this. But I would like to, in closing, and unless you have another comment, Daniel, we can come back, but I want to quote from the end of this article that Scahill wrote, because it reveals a little bit more, and you might comment on this. And this is how he concluded one of his last paragraphs. This process, he's again quoting those individuals who want the system to work. This is a good system, but we have problems. This process can work. We can work out the kinks. We can excuse the mistakes. And eventually, we will get it down to the point where we don't have to continuously come back and explain why a bunch of innocent people got killed. Now that there's biggest concern. They're annoyed by there are a few Americans and a few great people who will do research on this, and Edward Snowden's that'll try to tell us the truth on this. And by the way, you know, this is not Edward Snowden. This is a new source, which I think is very good. The architects, back to the quote, the architects of what amounts to a global assassination campaign do not appear concerned with either its enduring impact or its moral implications. You know, I just think this is key to this whole message. There's essentially no concern about the moral implications, about what rights are all about, what a country that's supposed to defend liberty is all about. There's so little understanding about why you shouldn't gloat, because we have assumed and we have been pushed with the responsibility of being the policemen of the world. And it wasn't because of our greatness that made us that. It was by the default of another country, another system, and an empire that collapsed on its own because it overextended itself. When the Soviet system collapsed, we didn't get a peace dividend, and look what we have. We have this mess with the assumption that it's our moral responsibility to do this and kill the bad guys and make up stories and rationalize to the point where we make excuses for ourselves. So along with the suggestion in the article, the American people ought to wake up and look at this and find out what the position is of all the candidates and everybody ever runs for office. What is their position on our responsibility to send weapons and troops and money and interference and trying to tell other people how to live? We don't tell our next door neighbor how to live. We know better. I don't think it's any more legitimate for us as a country with armies to go around the world trying to tell others how we think they should live. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.